For more on this crisis and how it's being seen in Ukraine, we're joined now by Michael Bociurkiw. He's a senior fellow with the Atlantic Council and a global affairs analyst. So Michael, as always, thank you for joining us.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
So what a whirlwind the past 24 hours has been. What do you make of everything that's played out?
Yeah, it's pretty head spinning. It was hard to keep track of all the movements, but I think we should be clear on one thing. I don't think we've seen the end of Mr. Prigozhin. I don't see him driving off into the sunset on a tractor in Belarus. I don't see him digging potatoes there, nor do I see him hiding in a jungle in Africa. He is the head of a massive multi-billion-dollar conglomerate with lots of money, lots of access to natural resources, two things that Mr. Putin needs, and also the fighting force, which the previous two folks alluded to. So Hillary, I tend to fall on those who suspect that this might have actually been a very heavily scripted set of events by the Kremlin. And the reason I say that, it kind of ended up a little bit too cleanly, that this could have been a way just for Mr. Putin, in a sort of messy way, to do some house cleaning at the top of the military leadership and to test who's loyal to him. Stranger things have happened in the Kremlin. That's why I'm saying we can't rule that out.
Even though there seems to be a feeling that perhaps this has actually left both of them weakened, both Putin and Prigozhin?
Putin is notorious for playing different sides against each other. And true that Mr. Putin, especially in the speech, looked very tired. He looked very desperate. And, you know, he's probably figuring out his next move in terms of what to do with the war in Ukraine. This also removes potentially a very lethal fighting force from the front lines of Ukraine. So that could weaken him. And also, as you well know, these events were very widely publicized on social media within Russia. So his public may be wondering, too, where is the strongman that we voted for a while back?
What about people inside Ukraine, Michael? I understand that you've been speaking with some of those people. Of course, I'm sure yesterday, as this was all playing out, they were thinking one thing. And now that we've seen how this is all unfolded, perhaps they're thinking something else. So what have you been hearing?
Sure. Well, there was certainly a sense of euphoria, exhilaration. I mean, the Ukrainian Telegram channels I follow were absolutely chock-a-block, full of videos from Rostov-on-Don of Mr. Prigozhin, of a desperate-looking Mr. Putin. But on the other hand, I think there's a sense of realism in Ukraine as well, that the counteroffensive is just getting off the starting block. The Ukrainians are in the process of probing the front line. But the other thing, and this was brought up actually at Ukraine Reform Conference that I was at in London, is that, you know, we mustn't forget that had the West moved far earlier to supply Ukraine with what it needs, the entire full envelope, main battle tanks, fighter jets, ammunition, you name it, that we wouldn't be in the position we are right now. It took Western leaders, and I include Mr. Trudeau in this group of leaders, quite a bit of time to grow the spine to not be blackmailed by Mr. Putin with nuclear threats and arm Ukraine.
So, Michael, at this point, well, we're all trying to figure out exactly what happened yesterday. Do you think that there is still the ability here, the potential for the Ukrainians to capitalize on this when it comes to this counteroffensive?
Well, it was a very small open window for Ukraine to act. But I think that if the forces, the muscle is depleted by the exit of the Wagner fighters. And by the way, Mr. Prigozhin was a lot of the time on the front lines doing commands instead of giving commands from Moscow, that, you know, that could provide an opportunity for the Ukrainians to exploit things. But, you know, we can't scream loudly enough in terms of how important it is for speed right now, for NATO, for Western allies to give Ukraine what it needs. And just quickly, Hillary, I have to remind people also that while this was all playing out in the early stages, there was a massive missile attack on Kyiv, on Dnipro, on Kharkiv. So that's the other thing I'm worried about, is Mr. Putin may want to show some of his own strength in the only way he knows how, by firing more missiles at Ukraine. I hope I'm wrong, but that's the way he tends to act.
What are you going to be watching for then? Not just in the days and weeks ahead, but the hours ahead even, assuming that perhaps we haven't seen the end of whatever it was that was playing out yesterday.
Sure. Yeah, well, a couple of things. The future path of Mr. Prigozhin, again, he's a very slippery fellow, but with a lot of resources. I can't believe he's going to, again, end up in retirement in Belarus. But the other thing is, Mr. Putin, how will he reorganize the top leadership? Military prosecuted this war well, so he needs to do quick appointment to get his shadow. And by the way, there's also reports that Chinese private firms have been supplying Russia with ammunition, with gunpowder for bullets, things like that. There's a lot more work to be done in terms of closing off those vulnerabilities, those channels that arms Russia with lethal power.
Michael, as always, great to speak with you. Thank you so much for this.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Michael Bociurkiw for us.